Okay, now we want to talk about some problems that groundwater poses. And the first example of this is going to be what happens when you lower the water table. So that, let's say that this is the ground, and now let's say that you have a water table that's up here, and then let's say that all of this area down here is full of groundwater. Okay, then if you were to dig a well, and let's say that the well goes down into the water table, it's going to start drawing water from the water table in there. And what will happen is that the water table, instead of being horizontal, will begin to curve downward like that, because it takes a while for water to be able to travel through the rock. And so it's not going to be instantaneous, the drop in the water in the entire water table. It's going to drop more around where the water is being pulled out. And eventually, this, if you draw even more water, then it's going to start to look like this. It's going to start to make a cone. And then if you pull out even more water, then the cone is going to start to look like that. So what effect could this happen on nearby rivers and other people's wells? So in the picture there that is on the left, you'll see that this is the before picture. So the water table went all the way up to the surface, and you can see where it intersected that valley. There's a river flowing in the valley. Okay, but then in the after picture, which is on the right, you have multiple wells that have been drilled into the water table, and they are sucking up all the water. And you can see how that has altered the water table, so that the water table no longer comes all the way up to the surface over here, so that where this little valley used to intersect the water table, you would have a river here. But now the water table has dropped below that river, and so that now this is dry. And also you notice that next to it over here, where the water table used to come up to the surface, the soil was well watered, and you could plant crops in it. Well, now the water table's dropped so much that this area over here has become dry. And so if you want to keep it wet, well, now you're going to have to pump water out of the water table and then pipe it over here and then put it on this region to keep this wet. Well, all that's going to do is it's going to percolate through the ground, and it will go back over here where it's being pumped out of the ground again. So you can see it's going to waste a whole lot of energy in order to be able to keep your crops watered. So that's one example of overdrawing. Okay, another thing that could happen is it could actually reverse the flow of the water under the ground. So in the before picture, the picture that's there on the left, you see how because of the slope of the ground, that the water used to travel in this direction. It used to travel from right to left. Okay, but because when you start pulling down that water table, so this is the direction it would have flowed if the water table had been horizontal. But if you start to alter that water table so it's no longer flat, but it's making this kind of a depression, now water will flow in this direction and it will flow in this direction. So on this side of where you put in your well, the water is pretty much going in the same direction that it used to. But over here, the water is now flowing in the opposite direction, again, towards the source of where you're pumping the water out. And so that could adversely affect where you can drill to get down into that water table. All right. Another thing that could happen is that you could have As the water is being pulled out of the ground, then that means the ground is going to start to compact on top of it. And if you've built your house on top of this soil, once the water leaves it and the ground begins to compact, it could cause foundation damage to your house. So we're going to call this subsidence, when the ground is lowering because of the absence of the water that used to be in that ground. Okay, what do rising water tables do? So we've talked about the effects when groundwater is being lowered. What happens if it rises? Well, it could rise into your basement. So it could cause basement flooding, for example. Another thing is that if the water table rises and it gets into soil that used to be stable, if it gets wet, it could become unstable. And so this could be a cause for landslides. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about sources of pollution and then what happens when pollution gets into groundwater.